When you think of states with a rich hunting heritage, Michigan undoubtedly is in the conversation for one of the top states. In 2020 alone, the state of Michigan sold a whopping 665,000 hunting licenses, the fifth highest total in the U.S. behind the likes of Wisconsin, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Michigan has also produced some of the more notable names and brands in the industry: Steve Rinella, John Eberhart, Jeff Sturgis, Mark Kenyon, the Mitch Rimpala buck, Bear Archery, G5, Prime, Scentlock, Darton, and Carhartt all hail from the great state of Michigan. There is one name, however, that is easily the most recognizable name in the outdoor industry, as well as in the musical industry.
I will make the world safe for electric guitar players. Die, you son of a...
Theodore Anthony Nugent, or as everyone else knows him as, Ted Nugent, was born on December 13, 1948, in the Detroit suburb of Redford, Michigan, to his parents Marion and Warren. Nugent and his three siblings grew up in a military family in which his father was a career Army sergeant.
He raised the Nugent kids with a militantly rigid hand, both literally and figuratively. 25, certainly 35 years ago, I probably would have used the word hate to describe my feelings for my father.
From a young age, Ted developed a love for both the outdoors and music.
I remember playing it, just beating on it and making noise in front of the family, as a little child would do, and they would throw pennies at me, which is hysterical. The price has gone up a little bit, but the sensations remain the same.
It was around this same time that Ted would also develop his love for animals and the outdoors.
From my earliest memories, was consumed with wildlife. I remember when I came home with the first quail that I busted with my wrist rocket slingshot. I mean, I was teary-eyed. I busted this nice cockbird with a rock in my slingshot because I got close enough and he was just starting to skitter away, and puck, I whacked him. And I brought him home and I was so excited. My mom and dad said, "That's great." And my mom helped me get it ready, cooking this bird that I killed myself.
During his childhood years, Ted recalls him and his family taking their annual bow hunting trip in October to northern Michigan. On the way, they would always stop at a local bow shop called Bear Archery, owned by none other than Fred Bear himself. In a 2018 interview, Ted was asked about his relationship with Fred Bear. He goes on in this interview to say, "Our annual family bow hunting trek north every October. My family and I would visit Bear Archery and enter what, unbeknownst to me at the time, could very well have been the bow hunting dream epicenter of planet Earth." The tall, lengthy gentleman with a contagious warm smile greeted us with a friendly handshake and welcomed us into his little archery shop. We joined the man on this and future encounters at the Grayling restaurant for some lunch and a piece of cherry pie and a glass of chocolate milk, then bid him farewell as we headed to our log cabin campsite to get on with our family bow hunting weekend. It would be a few years before I came to grips with just who this great man was and the unbelievable joyous opportunity I was so privileged to experience with him. Fred Bear was the gentleman's gentleman and will forever be in the hearts of all whom he touched. A listen to my tribute song for him conveys my and many other people's love for the legendary bow hunter. As he grew into his teenage years, his skills on the guitar would grow immensely. He formed a garage band in his high school years and would go on to win the Michigan State Fair's Battle of the Bands. Days after winning the competition, however, his father, who hated rock and roll and the path that Ted was on, took a job in Chicago and moved the family there shortly after to try and deter Ted from pursuing his rock and roll career. Long story short, it didn't work. Soon after arriving in Chicago, he formed the band, the Amboy Dukes, and the day after he graduated high school, he packed up his car and drove back to Detroit. After arriving back in Detroit, he found new band members and they kept the Amboy Dukes train going. 3 months later, the band would sign a record deal and release their first album titled The Amboy Dukes. They would go on to release 6 more albums and in the process would transform into Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes. In 1975, under the constant pressure of performing, he decided to take a break from music and get back to his roots in the outdoors.
You know, hunting is more than recreation and sport for me. It's almost religious around here. Hunting has always been a lifestyle in the Nugent family. Not only does the silence and the peace and the spirituality of bow hunting from the crotch of an oak tree for 6 silent, statuesque hours every day of the week help you rock and roll like a madman, it is the source of all that madness of this man.
Ted went to Colorado to hunt deer with bow and arrow. The silence and the waiting brought him to an undeniable conclusion. His career was at a crossroads. He wanted to play his own music on his terms.
Instead of a year off, I came back just a few months later, and I said, all right, I don't want any keyboards, but I want bass, drums, and guitar, and I want to play pure rhythm and blues rock and roll.
After the short-lived break, Ted came back with a vengeance. He signed with a new label and released his first solo album, simply titled Ted Nugent. The group would continue to produce multiple platinum albums throughout the late 70s and early 80s. In the mid-80s, he would join the likes of Jack Blades from Night Ranger and Tommy Shaw from Styx to form the supergroup known as Damn Yankees that would produce a double platinum album as well. Ted was an anomaly in the rock and roll community. He was a staunch anti-drug and anti-alcohol Republican in an industry full of left-wing drug and alcohol abusers. Ted would use his influence from time to time for messages and movements that he supported, but it wasn't until the 90s that he truly said enough is enough and began openly expressing his views, both personal and political. In 1994, Ted released a solo album titled Spirit of the Wild, a deeply personal album which charts his deep relationship with nature and hunting. It wasn't received as well in the music community as his prior albums, but it was Ted Nugent through and through. In this album, Ted released a song titled Fred Bear, a tribute to his late hero and friend. Ted still performs to this day, but ever since the release of Spirit of the Wild, his focus has shifted more to the hunting community. During his rock and roll days, Ted started a camp in his home state of Michigan called the Ted Nugent Camp for Kids. Founded in 1989, shortly after the death of his friend and hero Fred Bear, Nugent launched the nonprofit camp to teach inner-city kids about the healing powers of nature, the natural highs and stimuli of an outdoor lifestyle, and the definitive discipline of the aim small, miss small, mystical flight of the arrow for a higher level of awareness and ultimate quality of life. Ted was quoted saying, "I started our camp in 1989 with a simple goal, to introduce kids to the great outdoors. I made a promise to Fred Bear before he passed away that I would get kids involved in the outdoors. To this day, Ted is still keeping his promise to Fred Bear." As I'm sure many of you know, Uncle Ted also has made appearances on TV and still does to this day. In 2001, Ted started his own brand of hunting show on the Outdoor Channel called Spirit of the Wild. The show documents pretty much all of Ted's hunting and fishing adventures and is loved by the viewers. Viewers overwhelmingly laud the program's believability and down-to-earth connections as presented by the personality and passion of Ted's hands-on, entertaining hunting lifestyle. It can still be viewed on the Outdoor Channel to this day, and truth be told, I really don't see it going anywhere for as long as Ted is still able to do the show. In more recent years, Ted has been in the spotlight for his political views and statements. It is no secret that Ted Nugent is a vocal supporter of the Republican Party and various associated conservative causes, particularly gun rights and hunters' rights.
In America, we are such spoiled, left-lane hogging, gore-voting, pus-sucking brats. Kings, emperors, tyrants, kiss my ass.
Ted Nugent has been a lot of things throughout his life. An army brat, a rock star, a TV personality, and a spokesperson for the entire outdoorsman community. The one thing that Ted has consistently been, though, is real. He speaks his mind freely and without regret, and if something is bothering him, you will know about it. There may only be one Ted Nugent in this world, but his influence has reached millions. Uncle Ted, if you end up watching this video, thank you for all you have done for the hunting community. Your constant effort to keep the great tradition of hunting and shooting alive doesn't go unnoticed. There are plenty of other people just like me that cannot thank you enough for all you do.